All right, so for this video, I'm going to do an updated video about my lucid dream technique, which I call it a HILD, which is HILD, which is haptic induced lucid dreaming or holding induced lucid dreaming, because I hold an object in my hand as an anchor whenever I fall asleep. And so the basic synopsis of this technique, right? And I'll get to like the important sort of part of this later on. But the basic technique is that as you fall asleep, like once you have a wake back to bed, where you wake up in the middle of the night, you write down your dreams in your dream journal, and you're falling back asleep. What you want to do is you want to use this point of attention as a way to you want to siphon your awareness to the anchor as you fall asleep, right? Like this. And this is what I do is I hold this in my hand and I siphon my awareness to it as I fall asleep, right? And that sounds simple enough, but the important thing to note about this technique is that there is a 50-50 balance between mental imagery or daydreaming and the anchor. And it's not 60-40, it's not 70-30, it's a 50-50 balance, right? And I've discovered this over multiple trial and error, because I would go through multiple cycles of focusing really really hard on the anchor and trying to block out imagery, which would give me insomnia. Or I would go through multiple stages, or I'd go through this other stage of focusing too much on imagery, not focusing enough on my anchor, right? And I would sort of do this back and forth thing where it's like once I achieved like this middle perfect balance, I would get lots of lucid dreams, which I have been getting recently. But then I would go to like the other side, and I would tip the scales too much to one way or the other. So acknowledging that 50-50 balance is the most important thing whenever it comes to any maintained awareness technique, is that you're supposed to siphon your awareness to your anchor and immerse yourself in the imagery at the same time, with a 50-50 split in terms of how important how important it is to focus on your anchor and how important it is to immerse yourself in your daydreams, right? If you think about it like daydreaming, it's much easier to immerse yourself into that mental imagery than saying like, oh, okay, you want to enter the dream, because like how quickly you fall asleep and how quickly the dream spawns into your mind, it depends on a whole bunch of factors that is really out of your control. But what you do is you do this thing, and this is a thing that you can find online. It's called image streaming, right? Which is basically what you're doing is you're observing the random imagery that comes to your head, right? You're observing you're spectating your own mental imagery, and sometimes like right now, I'm imagining myself on a boardwalk, approaching and this is something that I visualized like last night as I was falling asleep. Is like I'm imagining myself on a boardwalk, and there's like tables with with umbrellas on top, and it's nighttime, right? So if you immerse yourself in the imagery, and you sort of visualize yourself interacting with the imagery in these sort of scenarios while focusing on this in like the background. It's like a background focus. It's that you're yet again it's a 50-50 split. You're not focusing on this to drown out the imagery. You're not focusing on the imagery to distract you from the anchor. It's a 50-50 split. Which is something that I didn't realize what was actually getting me lucid, and I've been getting lucid a lot easier recently. I think more easily than I've ever gotten lucid in my entire practice, because like I'll just randomly know that I'm in the dream. Like I won't even need to try super hard, because yet again, like that's another sort of imbalance, is that you try so hard and you focus on your anchor so much that you give yourself insomnia. But like the main point of this is that you want to balance like the image streaming, the daydreaming, you could say. Let's call it daydreaming, because it avoids fancy vocabulary. But you want to balance the daydreaming, the observation and the immersion in your own imagery, with the focus on your anchor sort of like in the background. And yet again, you want to have it be a 50-50 split. If one sort of like if focusing on your imagery distracts you from the anchor, then you want to tip the scales the other way. If focusing on your anchor distracts you from immersing in your imagery, then you want to tip the scales the other way. And you want to maintain that 50-50 split, where like both are equally important and one's not more important than the other, right? And yet again, it's not 60-40, it's not 70-30, it's a 50-50 split between daydreaming and focusing on your anchor in the background. Like it's not at the forefront of your mind. And again, it's something that you siphon your awareness to it as you immerse yourself in the imagery. You keep this in the back of your mind. Yet, and I can't emphasize this enough. The 50-50 split. It's not you're focusing on this 10% and focusing on your imagery 90%. It has to be a half and half split between the awareness and the imagery. And if you attain that 50-50 balance, where you're not over prioritizing one aspect. Yet again, because this is what I did, is I would over prioritize imagery. I would be like, okay, I'm just going to focus on imagery, and then it would be too distracting, or I'm going to just focus on my anchor, and it would be too insomnia inducing. It would, like, I wouldn't be able to fall asleep, right? So if you attain that balance where you're not over prioritizing one aspect over the other, then that is how you're going to be able to enter the dream with an awareness. And yet again, like the previous nights, my dreams have been much more vivid because of the fact that I've been focusing on my imagery as well as my, because what I was doing previously is that I was trying to just focus on my anchor, and I was keeping myself awake by doing that. But whenever I'm focusing on my imagery and the anchor with that 50-50 balance of, they're both equally important. I've been getting, my dreams are much more vivid. I'll enter the dream with lucidity, or I'll get spontaneously lucid for no reason at all. And yeah, I've just had like lots of lucid dreams recently. But because of the fact that I acknowledge that 50-50 split. So yet again, it's 50-50 between your mental imagery, the daydreaming, the image streaming, spectating your own mental imagery, and the background focus on the anchor. You're siphoning 50% of your attention to this, 50% of your attention to the imagery. And that is how you do, my personal lucid dream technique. That is how I do it, is that you have to have that 50-50 split. And if you over prioritize one aspect over the other, then the balance is lost, and you have a lower chance of getting lucid, right? Sometimes the balance isn't exactly perfect, but I'll still get lucid, or I'll get semi lucid. But having that 50-50 split, yet again, where you're not over prioritizing imagery, you're not over prioritizing the anchor. That is how I've discovered that that my technique works best. Yeah, and it has worked in the past. I have gotten lucid in the past, but I've gotten lucid much easier now that I acknowledge this 50-50 split. So that is sort of an update on how my technique works and how the technique operates. Because yet again, like I've gotten more and more lucid dreams recently, and it's been much easier to get lucid than I think in any other time in my practice so far. It's been easier for me to get lucid now that I have this sort of acknowledgement of that 50-50 split. I'm not over prioritizing one aspect over the other. It's both in perfect balance. Yeah, yet again, one's not more important than the other, right? So your imagery, like immersing yourself in the imagery that distracts you enough to fall asleep, and siphoning the awareness to the anchor, you have to acknowledge that they're both equally important. You can't say, oh, this is more important than this, or this is more important than this, because that was my fallacy whenever I was doing this technique. Right. So if you perfectly balance with that equal priority, the mental imagery, you're visualizing yourself in scenarios, you're visualizing yourself in environments, right? And you're allowing your mind to think about whatever it wants to think about while dedicating 50% of your attention to the anchor. Then that is how you're going to have easy lucid dreams. At least in my experience, it's been easier than any other time so far. But yeah, that's the video.